Yesterday we celebrated Palm Sunday. It's the time when Jesus went back into Jerusalem and there was the triumphal entry and everybody was excited and celebrating and waving palm fronds and laying their cloaks down on the ground and welcoming Jesus in as the Messiah, as the rightful King of Israel. It was an incredible time, and it was a time full of jubilation and joy. The next day, Jesus got to work because he knew what nobody else knew, that in less than a week he was going to be murdered. And so he had some things that he wanted to do in preparation for that time that we are going to celebrate in just a few days. On Monday, in Matthew 21:12 through 13, it says, "And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he said to them, 'It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers.'" So the question before us is, who is this Jesus? Oftentimes we think of Jesus as this kind of person who's meek and mild, who's calm, who's rational, who is kind and compassionate and caring. But then we see this picture of Jesus, and it turns out he's got some anger, and he goes into this temple and he is chasing people out, and he is telling them, "You need to go away. This is supposed to be a house of prayer, and you've made it a den of robbers." He's calling them thieves. This doesn't seem to make sense to us until we take a moment to really consider what is going on here. What is the purpose of the temple? Generations and generations and generations ago, God gave the ancestors of Israel a bunch of rules and regulations about how they were supposed to conduct themselves in the temple. How are they supposed to worship God? And one of the things he told them was that this was going to be a house of prayer for all the nations. This wasn't supposed to be just for them alone, but it was supposed to be opened up for everybody to have the same opportunity to go before God and worship him the way that God wants to be worshipped. And instead, what had happened is people were going into the temple, into the court of the Gentiles, which is where this was happening, and they were setting up tables where they were selling sacrifices and changing money so that people who came from outside of Jerusalem, outside of Israel, could change their money over so they could then go and buy those different sacrifices that they needed to be able to worship God. But they were profiting off of those people. There was a lot of profiteering going on here, and that's not creating a way for people to come and worship God. That is creating limitation and creating an undue advantage for the people of Israel. And so God was not happy about that, and he wanted to make that way plain, clear, and easily accessible for everybody who would come to him. Now, knowing that he was going to die in a few days and he was going to reset that entire system and no longer would people have to physically go to the temple, we have some things we can learn from this. What are areas in our lives, because now our hearts are the new temple, what are areas in our lives that maybe need to be cleaned out this week? What are places where Jesus wants to do a little cleansing in all of us? It's a good question to ask. It's a good thing to be considering as we continue on this week, Holy Week, towards this moment where we recognize and remember Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection on the cross, the freedom and the joy that it offers us, and the opportunity we can provide to make a way for others to come and worship God. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you soon.